You're listening to WCOM LP 103.5 FM Carborough and Chapel Hill. It's a Tuesday, it's 5 o'clock, and that only means one thing. It's time for another round of Snarky Faith with your host, Stuart Deloney. This is a space where we irreverently wrestle through life, culture, and spirituality, all with our heads in the clouds, our tongues in our cheeks, our hearts in our sleeves, and our feet on the ground. At Snarky Faith, the questions or even the answers are never the point. It's all about the conversation. So here's your host, Stuart Deloney.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to another round of Snarky Faith Radio. I'm your host, Stuart Deloney. So welcome again this week to Snarky Faith Radio. And trying to figure out how to break it to you guys. I've got some harsh news. Not really. Really, what I want to talk about this week, and the reason I feel like we need to kind of have a little sit down or kind of a disclaimer before we hop into it, is the fact that we're going to go on a little bit of a weird tangential journey. We'll have a central topic, but we're going to kind of go on a weird journey through a bunch of different topics. And hopefully by the end of it, it'll all knit together very pretty in this nice little wonderful mosaic of thought and conversation for us this week. And at worst, hopefully you'll just be entertained for the next hour. So I feel like win-win. We either have something that's intellectually very interesting and stimulating, or at least it'll be somewhat of a fun little wild goose chase of entertainment here for the hour. And I say that because we have a bunch of loose different stories that I'm actually going to kind of try to knit and put together under a central theme. And I'm going to start off with this because, first of all, I want to tell you that I love the fans and listeners of our show. I love you guys. And I don't say that just as lip service. I say that truly because there are some of you out there that enjoy writing back and forth through social media or through email with me on a regular basis. And I love it. I love it not as anything that like really strokes my ego, but I love it because I feel like it completes the conversation of what we do here. Many times when I'm talking, I feel like I'm the one-way conversation on this show, and then I begin to hear from other folks, and I love it. And one thing that I often ask you guys for is if you see stuff that's interesting, send it my way. And this is very, very interesting. So I'll go ahead and tell you, one of our beloved listeners had first brought this to my attention. And so I'm going to go ahead and give a little bit of a shout out. So keeping it fairly anonymous, but a little bit of a shout out to Angela. So well done, Angela. And so Angela had sent this and brought this to my attention. And when I tell you this week that we're going on like this weird, like circuitous, like serpentine, logical flow through the show, I'm going to start off by talking about Good Omens, the TV show that is on Amazon. I've started watching it, and it was actually my intent to be able to have an entire show about it because it's fascinating. And the author of the book that it's based on, Neil Gaiman, is someone that back in our early days when I used to host a show with Professor Ben, that we would have a different kind of recurring segment about snarky saints. And Neil Gaiman was on my list of people that I wanted to be a snarky saint. Neil Gaiman is one of the writers that's behind, well, he is the writer behind Good Omens. And I find Neil Gaiman absolutely fascinating. I love the questions he asks, both just theologically, literarily, and other things. He's just, I love the way his mind works. And I was excited when I saw this series was coming out. I'm a Doctor Who fan, so anything with David Tennant in it is pretty much good to go for me. And then Angela brought this bit of information up to me, which is beautiful and hilarious at the same time. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of background, just very snapshot of the show. So you end up having Good Omens is a show essentially about the apocalypse, or about, in this case, holding off the apocalypse. And the two main characters, one is an angel and one is a demon. And it's about their kind of relationship throughout history and the fact that they've come to love really how things are on planet Earth and what they do here. And they actually, both of them from different sides, want to be able to stop the apocalypse. that's going on. From which, as you kind of get further into the series, you know that the side of good, or the Christians, they want the apocalypse to come, because that means, oh, the earth is over and we all get to go to heaven type of a situation. And then on the flip side, you have the demon, who does not want to see this happen, because he also doesn't want to see the earth destroyed, because he actually kind of enjoys what humanity has done with it. And in many ways, this certain people have called this blasphemous, and it actually, saying that, oh no, it has made demons look cool, because David Tennant is just inherently cool. And here's kind of what happens. And I'm going to read a little bit. This is coming from an article over on Dead State, deadstate.org, and they put it like this. The series presents devils and Satanists as normal and even good, where they merely have a different way of being, and it mocks God's wisdom. And so what has happened in this is that Christians have come together. And there is a group called Return to Order, and it's an offshoot organization from the Foundation of for a Christian Civilization. That doesn't sound daunting or weird or anything like that. And what they are doing, they have set out to sign a petition. Okay, follow with me here. So 20,000 Christians have signed this petition calling on Netflix to ban the show. Now, if you are a person that is at all familiar with pop culture or this show that I'm speaking about, you actually know that this show is not on Netflix. It's actually on Amazon, which again comes down to the fact that Christians usually are not very educated when it comes to pop culture or the way things go in the world, but they kind of make a snap judgment on what they assume is a terrible show. So first of all, this was going to be something I was throwing up in the Christian Crazy of the Week, because it's just kind of amusing. It's just amusing just how head in the sand this group of conservative Christians are. So that's just amusing within itself, and it's easy to laugh at them. But what it actually led me to do is I'm going to do an entire show on this, because in many ways, as I was watching through this, I saw many, many connections to, if anyone has read C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters, where he writes an entire novel from the perspective of a demon, where it's kind of essentially everything is upside down world-esque, and especially in the way that they speak and talk. And in this way, I feel like this is something that C.S. Lewis would be highly amused at as you read through this. And why I bring that up, besides the fact that I was using it as a platform to say that we're not doing the Christian Crazy this week, because we're going to all be doing the Christian Crazy this week as we're going through this. It's not a segment. It's kind of the part of one of the layers I'm going to lay out here on this show. But is the fact that oftentimes when it comes to being outraged, especially within culture, Christians, and even more so conservative Christians, usually don't have their stories correct. They usually have the facts wrong, and usually they are kind of repeating things they've heard from other people that heard other things from other people. And none of this is based upon research or scholarship. So it ends up being kind of a situation like we've seen over the country, where we have people that become anti-vaxxers. They think that vaccinations are bad based upon just a bunch of preliminary things they've kind of read that's been pushed around on social media. They haven't actually done anything or dug any deeper into it. They've just read very, very limited research from people that have very, very limited intellectual depth on the subject, and assumed that it's true. And so one thing that I've begun to notice is that oftentimes the Christians become people that are very, very superstitious. And now they will argue with you and say that that's not true, but if you look at the actions and look at what they do, they're very, very, very superstitious. They are people that have, especially in recent years with the rise of Trump, have become people that have learned to distrust the media. They've learned to distrust government. They've learned to distrust science, and they've learned to distrust any kind of education and scholarship. And that all of that leads me to really, really the main topic that we're going to be hopping around on today. And we're going to be going into something that is called the Dunning-Kruger Effect. Now, many of you may know what this is already, but many of you may not know what this is. And this is a psychological term. And my favorite, though it just seems ridiculous, my favorite way that I've read how to describe this which may or may not actually give you the answer for what it is, but I just like the wordplay on this. And this comes from an article from Forbes magazine. And they put it like this. And then I'll actually fully unpack it a lot more later in the show as we go through this. But they said, coined in 1999 by then Cornell psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, the eponymous Dunning-Kruger Effect is a cognitive bias whereby people who are incompetent at something are unable to recognize their own incompetence. And not only do they fail to recognize their incompetence, they're also likely to feel confident that they are actually competent. Okay, that one feels a little bit like wordplay, but I do kind of love that in there. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to then read a better definition of that. And this is coming from verywellmind.com, and this is an article by Kendra Cherry called What is the Dunning-Kruger Effect? Whoa, really? Yeah. And so they put it like this. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a type of cognitive bias in which people believe they are smarter and more capable than they really are. Essentially, low-ability people do not possess the skills needed to recognize their own incompetence, and the combination of poor self-awareness and poor cognitive ability leads them to overestimate their own capabilities. The term lends a scientific name and explanation to a problem that many people immediately recognize, that fools are blind to their own foolishness. And as Charles Darwin wrote in his book, The Descent of Man, ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. So let that one soak into you again. Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. And so we're going to be dancing through that this hour. Hopefully not the ignorance part, but but the Dunning-Kruger effect. So we're going to be kind of breaking down different aspects of the Dunning-Kruger effect, and at the same time, we're going to be going through how we have seen this kind of ridden out with modern-day conservative Christianity, especially with evangelicalism. And yeah, so that's kind of the thesis here for the hour. And I know I'd mentioned earlier, and many people are like, oh, womp womp, no Christian crazy. And I tell you, don't worry about that, because all of the points we're going to be going through will be ripe with Christian crazy. You'll get so much Christian crazy, you're going to say, I wish it was just a segment on the show like it normally is, Stuart. And then, sure, we'll go back to next week. We have a normal show, and you can have it your way. Right? Okay, so we're kind of on the same page now, everyone, right? We're going to be going through the Dunning-Kruger effect. We're going to be going through how this connects to why the religious right is so cuckoo crazy and so hard to communicate with and deal with, and why they will continue to be there because of the predicament that they are in. And at the same time, they want to be there. They want to be there. All right? It's a really long intro for the show, but I'm glad you're tracking with me. And yeah, so buckle up. Let's get going, and let's hop into this and go deeper into the Dunning-Kruger effect. So let's talk about a hypothetical situation, a truly hypothetical situation, right? Like not a situation that I have lived through recently, not a situation where certain members of my extended family that I've been around lately would completely fall in line with what I'm going to be describing and talking about right now. No, pure coincidence. This is a purely hypothetical situation that I'll ask you in a very broad manner if you have ever been through a situation like this. Have you ever been in a situation, okay? Let's just hypothetically say it's a family gathering, and someone in your extended family begins rambling, spouting off on a topic with very much energy and fervor and from a position of absolute confidence, right? That they're proclaiming what they're believing is correct, and anyone that believes otherwise is absolutely dumb, stupid, and uninformed. You know, those type of people that, like, when you're sitting down and you're listening to this happening and you're already seeing like flaws in their argument and their logic and even what they're saying and everything else like that, the kind of situation that makes you want to almost like break your head from too many eye rolls, or trying to repress so many eye rolls, depending upon how intimate the gathering is that you're sitting around here. And you're sitting there as they continue just to ramble and go on and on and on. And it's just kind of, it feels like, wow, like if I wanted an example or a snapshot of what willful ignorance looks like, this would be it, right? So, from their study, from Dunning-Kruger study, they found this through their investigations. Okay, I'm going to give you a snapshot of this. We're going to then break it down. The people who scored in the lowest percentiles on tests of grammar, humor, and logic also tended to dramatically overestimate how well they had performed, meaning that their actual test scores placed them in the 12th percentile, but they estimated their performance placed them in the 62nd percentile. So again, you're conflating your own intelligence. Now, this is not strictly have to do with just intelligence. It has to do with how well you understand yourself and the world around you, how open you are towards new information and stimuli and things of that nature. Now, we all have members of our family that are not open to new information, except from certain news channels that rhyme with Cox News. Hypothetically speaking, right? So we have that. So we have people that ultimately think that they are smarter, that they are more correct than other people, that they have the upper hand when it comes to information and knowledge and competence. Okay. Now, speaking of that, here's where we're kind of going, circling around. I also love the beginning of this article, and this article is an ode to Sarah Huckabee Sanders from The Enemy. And this is by Brian Karam and from Playboy, because remember, hey, I just read Playboy for the articles. So yes, this is me proving that to you. I only read Playboy for the articles. And what Brian does here, I really appreciated this. And this is not going to turn into a Sarah Sanders Huckabee bashing session, because that's just also too easy. It's too low-hanging fruit. And all really that we'll say about her departure from the White House is just kind of like, bye, Felicia, and then be good. We're gone for it. But the reason I bring her up on this is because so much of who she is tied to her family. And so much of who her family is also tied to religion and faith, right? Her dad, Mike Huckabee, was a pastor, and now he just spouts crazy conservative garbage that really doesn't make much sense. So like Daddy, Sarah followed in his footsteps. And here's what I loved, and we'll kind of break this down, what I loved about this article about her, and really just speaking in terms of faith. So Sarah Sanders is a true believer. Conditioned by an upbringing rooted in Christian rhetoric that's impervious to reason, she views the world through a lens with which everything exists in absolutes. The world is absolutely against believers, and only the believers know the truth. So I'm just going to even break down that opening sentence there, because I think it's really important for us to begin to see this, and it's important for us to begin to see why American Christianity is so far off the reservation. And we're going to then break this down further more as we move on. But one thing that she said, that they said here in this article, and I think that this is really true of a lot of Christianity in America, is this: the world is absolutely against believers, and only believers know the truth. And we talk about like the Dunning-Kruger effect, and we can talk about other issues of things like confirmation bias or living in echo chambers where we only feed ourselves the same information that continues to confirm what our beliefs are. And so a lot of these begin to go hand in hand. And so when we look at this, we look at kind of Sarah Sanders as a kind of a snapshot of what folks of her ilk are about. They believe they are the only ones that know the truth. Now, you may push back and say, no, they mean that based upon simply just religion. And I will push then back again and say, that's true, but then it begins to leak and spread through every other area of their life. Somehow, knowing the only truth begins to then is what you see happen is Christians then begin to push against things like science and education. No, those are bad. Science and education are bad. Why? Because we, the believers, we, the less educated, we, the folks that very few of us have even gone through seminary, we, the torchbearers of God's holy word and kingdom, we are the only ones that have the truth. So then knowledge outside of that is erroneous, or at best, it's just extraneous. It's just not needed. And so you begin to see this permeate through a lot of American Christian circles, where science, there's all of this distrust when it comes to science. There's all of this distrust when it comes to education. I mean, I can't tell you growing up how many times I heard like sermons preached about how when kids, when they leave their parents' house and go off to secular education places, that they lose their faith, right? Or that science is incompatible with faith and religion because apparently God made us, but God made us to not understand the world around us and seek to learn more about how his creation works. No, screw that. All we need to know is in the Bible. And so we begin to do this. Like if you can already see how this begins to happen is, so once Christians kind of begin to shun and spur like science and education, we're already screwed. Like do you see what I'm saying here? Like the think process for folks in those circles, you're already almost done for. And what that does then, it actually pushes them to create this alternative reality. This alternative reality, which again, going back to that statement I'm going to continue to hammer down is from about Sarah Sanders, that the world is against believers and only believers know the truth. And also the lens that they engage the world around them with is in absolutes. It's very black and white. There's not nuance. There is not gray to these decisions. It's always very, very black and white. And you begin to see this. So you spurn science and education. You begin to form your own alternative reality. And in that alternative reality, again, what you're doing is you're trying to do things and say things that continue to confirm what you already think you know. So in this reality, the spirit is good. Things that are of God's nature and spirit are good. And things of the flesh or of the world are bad. Because again, remember, I was making fun of Christians earlier in the hour about how they were so stupid in the fact that they created a petition to call out Netflix, who doesn't even have the show Good Omens. They didn't even have that part of it right. Why? Because the worldliness, culture, flesh, bad, which actually, oddly enough, would be a very anti-Christian, if you go back theologically speaking, an anti-Christian view of the world. Many conservative Christians would argue with what I'm going to say right now, but I'm going to tell you is they've actually developed what you would call a very Gnostic belief. And a very Gnostic belief really believed that the spirit, mystery, there was like this unknown stuff to the world. That was always the spirit, and that kind of knowledge was good, and the flesh and things here of the earth are very bad. And that was a very alternative view. That was a very anti-Christian view within the early church. Gnosticism is not synonymous with Christianity. And if you even talk to other conservative Christians that have any idea or been through seminary, they would probably say Gnosticism bad. Yes. How do you live your life? Let's look at it. You live your life like a Gnostic would. Spirit good, flesh, and things of the world bad. So again, we're in a situation where our beliefs are not challenged, and we begin to create an alternative reality. I mentioned a little while ago, too, about this idea of confirmation bias, where we begin to seek echo chambers of sameness. Whether this is the church or whether this is at a Trump rally, we seek to hear the greatest hits all the time, because the greatest hits, God's good, God's coming again, bad people are going to be thrown to hell, good people go to heaven, or build the wall, lock her up, all those kind of things. Those things just seek to continue to tell us you're right and everyone else is wrong, which only solidifies that lens that everything is in absolutes and that only believers know the truth. Hopefully you're still tracking with me on this. Okay. And so hopping back to the article from Playboy magazine, it's just fun to say that here on the show when we're talking about faith. They go on to talk about this, back to talking about Sarah Sanders and her faith. It's scary enough to deal with this mindset in religious circles, but Sanders has applied this to politics and to Donald Trump. And it explains her defenses of Trump against all odds, her unflappable ability to tell the most egregious lies, to deny the facts, and to look upon those who stand against the president, or in the case of reporters asking questions, as heathens or unwashed sinners incapable of understanding the quote-unquote truth she claims to provide. Now, in this situation, the reason I'm saying this isn't strictly about her, I'm saying you can take her name out of this and talk about most of American Christianity within here. Most of American Christianity. So I can say this again, it's, and especially the relationship between evangelicals and Donald Trump. When we begin to apply this, think about this. They defend Trump against all odds. They have the most unflappable ability to tell the most egregious lies, to continue to confirm what they believe already is that Trump was God's appointed person, and they deny facts, and they look at anyone who stands against the president as wrong, as a non-believer, as one of the unwashed, as one of the heathens. Now, if you don't believe me, well, I promised you earlier that we were still going to have some Christian crazy running through the show today. And I'm a man of my word. So guess what? I'm going to give you an example of this kind of Sarah Sanders type of Christianity. And who better to listen to this? We talk about these weird bedfellows of faith and politics within the conservative world. Who better to talk to us than Jim Bakker? We love having Jim Bakker on this show. So let's listen to some of the crazy crap that Jim has been spouting recently. So here we go.
We just had a whole day of prayer for President Trump. Now, I believe God's going to answer that prayer.
I do too.
How do you pray for President Trump and his family?
Well, I pray every day for them.
So do
I pray every day. I think a lot of believers do.
Yes.
The Bible commands us to do that.
Yes.
I pray that God will give him wisdom, that the spirit of wisdom and might will be upon him from Ephesians 1. I pray for his protection.
Amen.
I pray for peace for him.
Did she just say, I pray for him to get a peace? That's bad news for Melania or whoever like Stormy Daniels 2.0 is. But I digress because I'm being an ass right now. So yes, continue on.
I pray that God will give his mind peace. Can you imagine?
No, I really can't. The onslaught. I know you're going. Oh, sorry.
No, please do.
No, really.
Please
What this man's going through.
Please do.
Not one. It's supernatural what
Yeah.
he's taking.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
How he is standing and how he
Yeah.
just keeps railing back.
Yeah.
The onslaughter is so bad. It's so bad that onslaughter is not even really a word. It's so bad. And how does he keep standing? How does this man stand with the amount of cheeseburger seeds? I don't know. It must be a miracle. It must be a miracle. And when Jesus comes back, we all know that Jesus is going to be riding in a golf cart. That's how he's going to do it. He's going to be wearing his little golf polo shirt and just riding in like Trump on a golf cart, a holy golf cart from heaven. It is. It's amazing. Trump is basically Jesus. He's basically Jesus in the flesh now, just with more extra Jesus flesh involved in this, is what would be said in one of these, what is this, probably an episode of the worst Sunday school class you have ever been in with a bunch of old ladies and Jim Bakker. That does kind of sound like hell. I'm sorry. People continue.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And,
But he listens to godly counsel too.
Yes, he does.
He
I mean,
does.
more
He
because we have,
believes in
you know,
it.
we have like you probably some kind of inside information on things that are going on, and you know, we always kind of hold up some of the former Republican presidents, you know,
Right, like Reagan.
yeah, and he far surpasses most of them in terms of the godly counsel he has around him that he listens to. You would never think it. When he first started running for office, who would have ever thought that we would have a president that would so surround himself with godly counsel?
We would never have
And so there's a
How do you
blessing that comes
explain
from that.
the controversy.
So now we get in here into the place where they're just essentially, like, the nicest way you can say this is they're completely speaking out of their ass right now. They're speaking out of their ass in a manner that will only confirm what them and their believers have already grown to know, is that essentially Trump is almost the second coming of Jesus. He's God's chosen in there. And all of the rest of this is the most ridiculous thing like you can hear. That, no other president has had godly counsel. Let's not forget the fact that, I'm not like propping up Billy Graham here, but Billy Graham has been the counsel of many other presidents. And does Trump have that? No. Who does Trump have? Paula White? Oh, far surpasses this. And we continue to see here, about how they've created their own alternative reality. They've created their alternative reality to continue to prop up this man because you know what would happen? The rest of their world and belief system would come crumbling down. It's just kind of like a house of cards. It's built on air and not much of else at all. Not much of anything at all. And to challenge that thought process is actually a scary thing. It is so scary that they will go to any length to do any kind of like mental or theological gymnastics to be able to continue to make sure their worldview and the way they view things and the way they view Trump stay the same. Now, see if you can spot the mental gymnastics that are going on here. Just see if you can figure it out. I think you can.
President, the Trump who uses language that we don't like sometimes.
But we're seeing him become more and more godly.
Yeah.
You know, we're seeing him want to put Bible reading back in school.
That's right.
Come on.
That's right.
Bible reading back in school and prayer.
All the things that the church has been stolen from the church, he's wanting to restore.
Yeah.
He wants to restore the dignity and power to the church.
Yeah.
And not take the Bible away.
Right.
We're so close. They don't get this. But we're so close to the Bible being illegal.
Yeah.
Oof. So, you first saw what they were doing here was, well, he does have some potty language, and we don't want to mention the dalliances that he's had on the side and the lying and all that other stuff because Bible, because church. And then they throw in the kicker. They throw in the kicker to make us scared. Jim says it because the Bible is about to be illegal. Now, what he's basing this on does not exist, but it is a wonderful fear tactic to be able to keep his followers in line. It continues to prop up those ideas. Like when we were talking about Sarah Sanders, and you're laying out the world in absolutes. Everything is in absolutes. There's good, there's bad, there's nothing in between. Shows like Good Omens must be bad because there's characters that are demons. Must be bad, must be bad, must be bad. Should we read into this or look into any of the stuff deeper? Hell no, because it's all bad. And bad, in their definition, is something that is different from what they believe. Doesn't matter what it is, but if it's something that isn't based upon their very narrow worldview of Christianity, and I want to say this. Because we have agnostics and atheists that listen to this show too, just for fun. But I want to say this is that this is also not Christianity. Now they have taken Christianity and they have turned it into this weird narrow thinking. Not even religion. It's even like worse than religion. It's this kind of just narrow thinking mindset that you either like wholeheartedly ascribe to or you're bad. You're bad. And no one wants to be bad because bad people, they go to hell. They go to hell, straight to hell. So here's the point where Jimbo doubles down. Doubles down hard on the rhetoric and what's going to happen in order to keep all of those that are in this situation, that are in this kind of belief system and this whole echo chamber, it keeps everyone in line because guess what? If we don't do what God's telling us to do, bad things are going to happen.
What's coming next, if we keep losing, you're going to see the leaders of the church and the leaders of the gospel and the political conservative leaders that are powerful, you're going to see them suddenly die, suddenly killed, suddenly as they were driving, suddenly as they were in a boat, suddenly in an airplane. You're going to see one after. God spoke to me this years ago what would happen near the end. And I believe we're in that time. They're so desperate. This is life and death. This is the hatred of murder is in the country.
Okay, that last bit, I'm not really sure what that means. The hatred of murder is in the country because people hate murder and then they're going to murder people because they hate murder. That's A plus B equals 75. I'm not really sure where he's going with that. But you begin to see them double down on this. Like, if we don't do this, then this will happen. And none of this is based on any type of reality. I mean, think of this. Like we have laws in our country that are established that are against murder. Oh, so if Trump doesn't win, all of our Christian leaders are gonna die. Womp womp. I mean, what? Like, where's this coming from? Oh, God told me. And that one statement is the, for lack of a better term, the trump card of Christian leaders. It ends up being the thing that I have seen throughout being a parishioner, being someone that's attended church, and also for being a pastor, where I've seen people use that as a power play. Because for a Christian leader to say, God told me, how do you argue with that? Especially if people are wholeheartedly suckling over, Jim Bakker's many teats. They all every week we got to listen to Jim Bakker show. We got to know what Jim's going to tell us because that's the only way that God is going to tell us anything. Because somehow we can't hear from God. We need to hear from God through these people. And that is scary, and it's frightening, and it's manipulative, and it's disgusting. But what it does do is it seeks to prop up this false worldview. And in this false worldview, what we begin to see what happens is there are there's the wolves and the sheep in there. There's the folks that kind of believe what they're saying, but they're also psychologically saying these things so they can continue to stay in power, continue to get money, continue to get what they want out of the sheep of the situation. And I know I've probably gone a long while without saying this here on the show, but I need to say this again, is that none of this has to do with biblical Christianity. None of this has to do with Jesus. None of this has to do with any of this. Now, this does have to do with the construct or the system that we have kind of erected here that we call institutional church here in America. It does fit well within that system. And in many ways, they become so synonymous, like the church in the Bible, the church in Jesus, the church in this. But, we need to be reminded also at the same time that we don't talk about the church as a building or an institution in the Bible. The church in the Bible is only spoken about as the people of God, the people that follow after the ways of Jesus. And the ways of Jesus have nothing to do with whatever amount of craze that they're selling. And you may say, Stuart, but you're using these nutty people to be able to prove your point. And you're right. But the same thing happens. Look at the John Pipers of the world. Look at the John MacArthurs of the world. Look at the Robert Jeffress of the world. These people that are power brokers within the faith, they do the same thing. They're just a little better at it. Or actually, they've had to learn to evolve their language to seem a little bit more intellectual because the people they're going after have bigger purses. They have more money. The Jim Bakkers of the world are the kind of the low-level charlatans that just kind of get the old people's money as they continue to sell them on the coming apocalypse. Don't believe me, but yes, Jim Bakker has also talked about the best place in the world to live. If the end is coming is in, I think it's Branson, Missouri, and they're actually selling plots of land for people to go live there because when all hell breaks loose, there's nothing better than being in Branson. I don't think that's a statement that's ever true, that there's nothing better than being in Branson. I really don't feel like that's a statement. Sorry for those listeners that we have in Branson. I don't think there's any of you out there. So if you are and you were offended, you live in Branson, so learn to deal with it, sucker. I'm just sorry. So circling back to the Dunning-Kruger Effect, and what I'm getting at here is this. And in their own study, they had said this. They said low performers are unable to recognize the skill and competence level of other people, which is part of the reason why they consistently view themselves as better, more capable, and more knowledgeable than others. And when they are able to see other people like a Jim Bakker, or Robert Jeffress, or a Franklin Graham, any of these folks, when they begin to see them and they see that these are people that have platform and status, and those people with a platform and a status are speaking the same things that they believe in, oh my gosh, it just solidified their worldview. Now, we mentioned earlier that that worldview that we're speaking of is really devoid of education. It's devoid of reality. It's devoid of science. It's devoid of actually seeing the way the world works around us. It's actually devoid of good theological reading also. I will add that. And we begin to see that. We begin to see what happens when people begin to they have this warped, disoriented view of the world. And in that, which actually I will tell you is very biblically speaking, is the idea that they begin to elevate themselves. They elevate themselves above others, even though they really shouldn't be. They begin to believe that they are right and everyone else is wrong, that somehow other people do not have they don't have a story that matters to God, only their story matters to God. And if we want to get a little biblical, I'm just going to throw in James 1:22 here, where James says, "Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Also do what it says." And the problem is this. The problem is this, that we have seen over the longest time with the American church, and especially with the rise of the religious right. We've seen a church that is more about lip service and controlling through judgment than actually people living out the word. Like the central theme of Jesus is love. And the mere fact that the church in America is not known for how it loves people tells us right off the bat that it's gone wrong. Now, you may be able to push back and say, well, but the church does this and this. No. But the fact that the church, the heart, the core of the church is not love, that's a huge problem. That's a huge, we have missed the mark. We've lost the plot. We've gone off the reservation. We are not anywhere near what Jesus meant for us. Where Christians are more concerned with being morally right, or assuming that they actually know what morally right means, when they would rather feel right than feel humble or loving, when they would rather be judgmental than compassionate. That just tells you right there, this has nothing to do with what Jesus created here. It has nothing to do with it. Like, it may have the word Christ in it, as in Christians. We kind of took a little bit of letters here and kind of moved them over here, but the ethos, the spirit, the heart, the love of it is not there at all. It's devoid of it. They listen to words, but they deceive themselves because they don't do what his words say. Reading the Bible should not move you away from the earth, should not move you away from culture. It should not move you away from people that are not like you. On the contrary, it should push you towards them. Because one of the biggest problems that we see here with falling into the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it happens to all of us. I'm not going to just say like that it never happens to me, it never happens to you. No, it does. But one of the keys that we have to begin to see here is that we are better humans when we are in community with others. We are better humans when we're being challenged in our beliefs. We're better humans when we are living like sacrificial lives, trying to help others. Because I see problems at our southern border when we have essentially concentration camps going on there, where they are rounding up migrants, separating families, and putting them in deplorable, inhumane situations. And I see Christians continuing to support this, which is sick. It's sick. Why is it sick? Well, if you believe anything that's in the Bible, people are created in God's image. People are image bearers of God. I am, and someone that Jim Bakker is too. Which is hard for me to say at times. But Jim Bakker deserves my love and compassion. Now, I can knock and kick at his platform all I want because I think his platform is evil, but again, I'm not anti-Jim Bakker. I'm just against the lies that he's perpetuating in the name of Jesus. And if anyone has an ounce of compassion, an ounce of humanity, to see what's happening on our southern borders, it is absolutely reprehensible. It is deplorable. It is inhumane. And the fact that people continue to stand behind Trump and say that he is God's chosen person when children are suffering and dying, when families are being separated, when people are being treated like they're not even human anymore, when people are having to live in squalor where they are not given beds or blankets or anything else of that nature, and they're held in these internment or concentration camps or camps where they're not allowed to leave, but we're watching you and holding you here and treating you like you're non-human. I see that as a human. I see that it breaks my heart. As a father, I can't imagine like seeing children that are going through this and people being okay with that. But for us, since we've doubled down, since we've gone after Trump, since we've continued to prop him up as this man of God, the man that God has given us, since we have done that, American Christianity in many ways will continue to double down with where they're at. They will continue to make excuses. And as they make those excuses, they are making those excuses without the eyes and the heart and the mind of Christ. To look at those situations that are happening down there for people and for folks to not have compassion towards what's happening means I feel like these people don't know Jesus. And I'm calling out Christians that are doing this. They do not know Jesus. For people to not have the compassion enough to say, why are these migrants moving here? Why are they moving here? They're leaving a situation that was such hell on earth that they don't need to be told a false story about the boogeyman devil and the boogeyman, ooh, when you die, if you don't follow Jesus, you go to hell. No, they know hell. They know hell right now. And somehow, the hell that they left and the risks that they took, even knowing that this may happen to them, being thrown into these concentration camps that we've set up on the southern border, somehow that is still better than what they left. For us to be people that do not have a compassion, for us to be people that our hearts are not broken and saying, oh my gosh, this is not an immigration crisis, this is a humanitarian crisis, and we need to be able to do all that we can to be able to help these people. So for Christians to be able to stand behind Trump and to stand behind his willful ignorance and bigotry and hatred, to say that he's the man that God chosen for them, I feel like of all of it's heretical, it's blasphemy. It has nothing to do with the heart and soul of God. If you believe at all the God of the Bible. Now, if you want to believe the American Christian God of power and money and all this other BS, well, then yeah, it makes total sense. It makes total sense with that. But the problem is we continue to see people doubling down in their efforts to continue to prop up something that is so far evil as it is so completely stupid. I feel like that would sum up Trump and those that continue to act like he is a man of God and he is changing and God's using him and all this kind of stuff. I mean, like in so many ways, the best way you can describe him is really just stupid. Like he is the Dunning-Kruger Effect in the flesh. In the flesh. I mean, going back to their study here, the people who score the lowest percentiles of tests on grammar, have you read his tweets? Humor, does he have any? And logic, doesn't have any there either. Also tended to dramatically overestimate how well they had performed. Stable genius. Trump continues to call himself, oh, he has high IQ, everyone else has low IQ. And first of all, I'm pretty sure folks that are true geniuses sit around talking about IQ all the time. Because really, that's the only way you show your intelligence is just stating your IQ. Yeah. And so the causes of this, the causes of being a part of all of this Dunning-Kruger effect, the causes of this is people overestimate their own skills. They fail to recognize the genuine skills and expertise of other people. They fail to recognize their own mistakes and their own lack of skill. They lack the ability to understand where their own limits are and they lack the ability to see their own mistakes. They're prone to overconfidence. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous when we talk about this. And why do I bring this up? Well, I also bring this up because there's an article from Jonathan Easley on The Hill entitled "Evangelicals Go All In for Trump's Re-Election." We saw this. Over 80% of evangelicals voted for Trump. And they're ramping up everything again. They're ramping up this flawed presidency. And honestly, I would be fine if we just take God out of this. We can just call Trump the a-hole that he is. But when you begin to mix faith in this, it begins to get dangerous, it begins to get disgusting, and it begins to get just really weird and warped and incestuous, kind of like, like Donald and Ivanka incestuous, that kind of a thing. But the fact that there's been so much conservative Christian money, so much that has been just delved into the 2020 campaign, people believe that this is God's will that they are following after here, and they are so far away from God's will. And this is not about me saying one candidate is better than the other candidate. This is about me saying that to follow Trump is to follow Trump. To follow God is to follow God, and the two are not the same. And just do not confuse those two things. I can sit and have a whole show about why I think Trump is terrible, and that's not my point. My point here is Trump is Trump, God is God, and they are not the same. And the reason I believe this, the reason that I believe that Christians are so susceptible to the Dunning-Kruger effect are the way that we have set up churches. You have people that come every Sunday to listen to a mouthpiece or a pastor tell them what to believe. It's not much different than politics. We have Trump telling Christians what to believe. We have Jim Bakker telling Christians what to believe. Christians are not taught to think on their own. And in the church, we've lost the art of contemplation. You see, contemplation is an ancient practice where we're able to think what is going on in our heart, to ask what our motivations are, and to contemplate what is moving around us. We do not do that anymore. Why? It's too much work for most people. Also, we've lost the art of community. To live in true, authentic community means that we have others to sit there and celebrate things with us, but also they're there to push back against us because they know us, that they know there are better things for us to be investing ourselves in. Community says that I want the best for you and I'm going to help you get there, even if it may offend you. But I do this because I love you and I want to see that you're moving and becoming the best you possible. We've lost contemplation, we've lost community. When we lose that, we lose the ability to challenge ourselves for what's true. And our churches have become echo chambers of sameness again and again, while people around the world, around our country, continue to suffer. And we do nothing but we sit on our hands and we say, well, our pastor just said that we're good with God. Or our pastor told us to vote here. See, when Christianity has created its own system of alternative reality, when they have spurned science and education and said all those things are bad, when we only seek to listen to and read the things that do not challenge us, but sit to solidify what we already feel like we know is true, which isn't true, we're not really Christians anymore. We're not challenged by life. We're not challenged by the nature of God. We're not challenged by the words of Jesus, because the words of Jesus are set to challenge us on a regular basis and continue to challenge us. They're meant to be audacious. They're meant to make us question, how am I loving my neighbor? How am I loving my enemy? Am I doing everything I can? They're meant to challenge the status quo. They're meant to challenge the American tradition. They're meant to challenge politics. They're meant to challenge the religious. If we are not always seeking to make ourselves better humans and to seek to make the world a better place, we've lost the heart of Christianity. And once we've lost the heart of Christianity, all we're going to do is we are going to be really excited because we signed a petition to condemn a show that's not even on Netflix. Because we never watched it, but because we assume it's bad. And I, for one, do not want to be a person that is a part of any of that. So just a reminder, as we end this broadcast, you can catch us on podcast at www.snarkyfaith.com. And as I've talked so much about Good Omens, I am going to finish binging Good Omens, and we're going to have a show next week talking more about that. So as I send you out into this world, I challenge you to not fall victim to the Dunning-Kruger Effect, but to be people that continue to challenge yourself, challenge your loved ones to be better. How can we be better humans? How can we make our world better that are around us? And to seek where is there suffering in this world, and how can we alleviate that suffering? How can we make other people's lives better too? That is the heart of God. So I send you off with the holiest amount of grace and snark and peace. I'm out of here. Catch you guys next week.
WCOM is listener-supported community radio, and Snarky Faith is only possible through our sponsors. Lumen, a spiritual community of seekers, sojourners, question askers, doubters, and skeptics, is a collective of fellow travelers that embrace the truth that all of life is sacred, hope is real, and tomorrow can be a better day than today. All are welcome. You can find more information at www.lumencommunities.com.